It's lovely to be here in Russia. My name is Thaheer Mullins. I'm a partner at Savant. Thank you for that introduction. We do science and engineering innovations. And I'm here to share a little bit about what we're doing in South Africa as a part of BRICS. We've heard from Mayeresh about India and Julia about Russia. Very interesting journeys. And we'll now tell you a little bit about South Africa. Just a little bit of a tidbit about myself here is that even though I'm a partner at Savant, I've also got my own consulting company called Dialogue for Africa. My own consulting company from Dialogue for Africa, and it specializes in innovation, investment, and trade support across Africa. So one thing to also note is that a lot of the information I'm going to present to you today comes from an organization called the South African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. We don't have platforms like Carter and those sorts of things. So a lot of the information that we gather comes from disclosures that the fund managers and GPs make actually directly to SAVCA. And that sort of gives us really good indicators of where things are. So that logo that you'll see on top, that's definitely something worth paying attention to. Looking at the local VC trends, I must also mention that the volume here is, the value here is actually a little bit higher. So add a 0 to every number that you see there. So that's 50 million, 10 million, and $150 million. So what we can see here is that we've got a very young VC ecosystem in South Africa. It started with a lot of conservative investors, and over time it started to grow. A lot more risk takers started joining, and so now we're starting to see the volume and the value of the VC deals starting to increase in South Africa. We've also gotten a very interesting trend in terms of exits. So you'll see that at the early stages, we started investing into later stage companies, and that drove early exits. And then we started doing a lot more early stage companies. What you'll also see is that we followed the same hype cycles that the rest of the world follows. So those exits you see from 2019 going through 2021, that was the same sort of hype cycle that the global VC landscape was tracking. And then we started having a little bit of more conservative environment again, and that's why you're seeing a slowdown in exits. But even though that there's a slowdown in exits, the value of the exits that we're still seeing are quite significant. In 2025 alone, we've had a very decent $100 million exit via a merger with a global company. So the South African ecosystem is still growing. It's good, but still mostly driven by GPs and angels. We've got an interesting trend now where we're starting to see more debt coming into the companies as well. So you're not just having these high-risk equity tickets. One of the facts that I'm very proud of in terms of South Africa is that we have one of the highest sort of diversity allocations when you think about gender, because 42% of the companies that have been invested by GP managers have at least had one female founder. If you look globally and you look across Africa, that number is very different. So this is a number that I'm very proud of. I firmly believe that females make better decisions and they actually become really strong managers. So this is very good to look at. And then the other part to note is that even though we've deployed about 150 million in venture capital into the ecosystem, there's still a lot of dry powder sitting there in excess of that amount. So that means our investors are still going to deploy quite a bit more, We've also got a lot of new funds sort of coming into the environment and doing deals. So if you look at it, who's leading the deals? Local VC fund managers are actually leading the deals, which is a big thing in Africa. If you look at all the other countries, you've actually got a lot of the international investors leading those deals. So what does that mean for us? It means that we get to set the terms of those deals. So in South Africa, we're very frugal. We don't like to spend a lot of money. And so when we do deals, we go in at the lowest price point possible, right? And then when those founders then reach a certain point, they need to go and raise capital overseas. The value difference that we see is quite significant because the international investors tend to price a lot higher. So for us, this has been really good. If you look at the smaller graph, you'll see in 2023, that was actually flipped, but there's been a sort of receding of capital away from emerging markets and that sort of thing, and we've actually benefited from that. Something important to note here is that corporates make up to 6% of the capital going into these companies. Most VCs have a company that has a corporate investor who's also a company somewhere in their a customer somewhere in their portfolio. So that means at least one of the companies in your portfolio is likely to do really well. Government also does do deals directly sometimes. They don't necessarily lead the deals, but they've been really important in getting more involved in our ecosystem. They've helped catalyze pension funds to now climb into fund of funds, which have then climbed into the VC funds themselves, which has catalyzed a new sort of range of investors. They initiated our very first VC fund of funds by putting $400 million down on the table. And then 50 listed companies then came in and funded the rest, Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed companies. So the government has been very instrumental in developing our VC ecosystem. In fact, in the early days when VC was still picking up, you will see that we had something called a Section 12J, which was a tax incentive, which allowed you to write off or your tax investments. You actually get a rebate for it. And so that actually catalyzed quite a bit of capital into the ecosystem. So looking at the different sectors that we're in, if you look at the early days, VC was very conservative. We didn't have that many sort of tech-enabled businesses, and there was a lot of first-mover opportunities in high-growth sectors. But over time, ICT, information communication technology, became a little bit more important. Software as a service type of companies, these tech-enabled companies started to grow, and within that, more subsectors started emerging. Fintech, instrumentation, online marketplaces are all strong. And of late, as of 2024, very interestingly enough, AI and machine learning has become a significant, it's still small, it's only sitting at around about 5%, but it's still can become a significant segment that we're now starting to see develop. South Africa, we've got a range of different instruments available. I'm just skipping over that previous graph so you can look at this one because it's easy to understand. When we started out, we had a lot of later stage investors. We've now got a lot of early stage investors, and that is due to these various interventions that I mentioned around government and pension fund involvement and those sorts of things. You're now about to see that Series A bracket, if you look at the purple part of the graph, expand even more going into 2025. Where we've already, if you look at the VC ecosystem now in South Africa, we've already done 330 million, which is double the size of what we did last year. That's skewed by a couple of later stage deals, of course, but there's a lot more activity happening on the later side. And then we'll see more interventions coming into place, which has started already with government trying to incentivize more seed stage investors to get involved in the ecosystem. Most of the companies are located in the Western Province. That's where Cape Town is. For the long time, the Western Province was the leading location. And then it still is, but what we're starting to see now is that Gauteng is also starting to recover. But what we're also seeing is that a lot of the founders in the companies that we back are starting to now offshore their companies to get international capital. And so what we're starting to see is that the HQs, the headquarter locations, are starting to shift now to overseas as well. And that's where you see that blue trend starting to emerge. And what I just want to highlight with this particular graph is that if you're looking at location, if you're looking at volume, and if you're looking at value, across all of those, most of our co-investors actually come from outside of South Africa. So there's a lot of attractiveness to what we're doing. And so we also do welcome any of you to join us. Even though AI and ML is a very small part of the sectors that we are sort of supporting, the technology is used across sectors. So it's definitely featured within operations. We're seeing it, AI being used for rapid MVP development, so people, aren't reliant on coders, which are a lot slower than machines. Products themselves are AI enabled. We're finding, a lot of embedded AI in these technologies. And then we're also finding, because it's an AI ecosystem, that we actually have companies that are dedicated not necessarily to AI, but for you to getting your data AI ready, which is also very important. Investors are starting to use it as well. We are using it for filtering, we're using it for deal analysis, we're using it for portfolio analysis. So, all the meetings that we have with portfolio companies, we take notes, we plug it into AI, and we say, are there any challenges? It helps us focus on streamlining our efforts and what we do. That's, in a nutshell, sort of where we are in terms of AI and the presentation. I just want to point out that one of my favorites is Summit Deals over here, because they've actually built a new platform. It's going to be sort of like Carter, it's South Africa focused, and then Taxdom over here is an interesting tax company that got acquired by an AI company, and they're now sort of driving more efficiencies in there. This Raptor allows you to get AI ready for your businesses. Lockstart helps you better process your data. Cognitive Systems is actually a distributed AI engine for multi-utility use cases. So, you've got your main brain in the cloud, and you've got your edge processing for that as well. So we've got a lot of interesting companies within the AI space in South Africa that's either headquartered there or operating there, servicing South Africa, Africa, and the rest of the world. So that is it on venture in South Africa. Thank you very much.